Hello and welcome to episode 114 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR. As always, I am joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva, and today we are going to go team by team through each NFL franchise, talking about important week 3 takeaways, waiver wire guys, role changes, DFS, anything else, COVID. Evan, what's going on?
What's up, man? I was picking up this 80-pound kettlebell like 2 days ago, and like got this back injury. It's like the most painful. Like I can't even like walk. Like it's so painful. So if you hear me during the show go like like it's because I just like moved in the wrong direction. But yeah, the big news of today was, of course, that 8 members of the Titans organization, only 3 players, 5 members of the staff, were confirmed positive for COVID-19, and everybody's worried that the Titans game is going to get canceled. They are playing the Steelers, yes. So I hope you got your bets in on the Steelers early on, because if the Titans do play, then they're going to be playing without any practice and, you know, all Zoom conference game planning. So I don't know. We're just going to have to play it hour by hour, minute by minute, day by day, and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And I'm optimistic about the whole situation. The NFL is the most greedy capitalists in the history of the world, and they're going to find a way to figure this out, even though maybe it doesn't look like they had a plan right now. I think they were always planning for something like this, and we'll see how it goes in terms of fantasy. Obviously, we need to think about waivers in a different way, maybe a little bit, and we'll get to that as we get through some of these guys. Reminder that this podcast is free, of course. The NFC version is premium. Also, for subscribers this week, we have the Friday Night DFS slate breakdown with myself, Evan, and Wiggins, the Makisupa show, if you will. The Saturday GPP show with Dink and Leone, which is just so good. I'm obviously biased, but it really is so good. And then Sunday, right before lock, Evan and I with the last minute live stream. If you have not signed up yet, we do have weekly, monthly, full season options up, access to all our projections, shows, top plays, Silva's matchups, all my DFS stuff, everything. Okay, let's get to it with the AFC and this Baltimore game. I mean, they were a mess last night. Absolutely brutal game. They were awful. Mark Andrews, I thought, was particularly awful. Lamar was not good. And honestly, like, I don't want a victory lap because they have some outrageous matchups coming up. Washington, Cincinnati, Philly. But kind of what I thought in the preseason with Marquise Brown is coming true a little bit. We have a very small guy, would be a massive outlier in the league's most run-heavy offense with a quarterback who I love, but let's be honest, he's not Aaron Rodgers out there when it comes to throwing the football. So, you know, but like I said, Washington, Cincinnati, Philly next. It sets up really well for bounce back spots over the next month for the Ravens. What did you see out of their game against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football?
Just a bad game. After the game, Lamar Jackson said the Chiefs are like the Ravens' kryptonite. And yeah, I don't know if that's the case, but they certainly did not play well. They came out looking good on their first drive, but then settled for a field goal, and then it was all Chiefs thereafter. The backfield continues to be a 3-man ordeal, and even in good offenses, we're going to struggle to carve out consistent, bankable, reliable fantasy production, pinpointed before the game. And so that's going to create headaches. These guys are all just flex options. Gus Edwards was used, with the game on the line this week, after being more of a garbage time back in week 1. So it's a true 3-man backfield. Mark Andrews is someone who has Mark Andrews on one of my main event teams. That was a very, very tilting performance from him, just not coming down with contested catches, not making plays with the ball when the ball hit his hands. But he will have better days ahead. And you mentioned they got Washington coming up next, so they should get right back on track, I think.
Yeah, and I think a really good spot for Lamar against Washington, because like we saw with Kyler, when Washington rushes the passer, which they are one of the best teams in the league at rushing the passer, it's going to encourage Lamar to run even more. So from a fantasy perspective, I like rushing quarterbacks against Washington.
And Washington also lost Chase Young and Matt Ioannidis to Chase Young. We don't know if he's going to play this week, and then Matt Ioannidis is stud defensive lineman. He's out for the year, so they're going to be even weaker up front.
Okay, let's go to the Buffalo Bills. First thing I want to talk about is the injury to John Brown, because we both love John Brown and we love what he was doing. injury does not sound great on John Brown in terms of his calf. After John Brown went down, they went to Gabe Davis as the primary wideout opposite Stephon Diggs. Gabe Davis got in 46 snaps. Cole Beasley stayed in the slot. McKenzie and Andre Roberts barely played. Tell the people a little bit about Gabe Davis, and is he somebody you would consider picking up on the waiver wire?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in need of receiver help, and a lot of fantasy teams are, there have been a lot of injuries early in the season. Gabe Davis, 4th round pick. The Bills came out playing 4 receiver sets in week 1, and he was in the slot opposite Cole Beasley with Diggs and John Brown on the outside. They love this kid. He caught all 4 of his targets for 81 yards this past week against the Rams. And I certainly think that he's going to be in play as like a wide receiver 4/flex. Going forward, the Bills have some really, really nice matchups coming up. The Raiders this week, and the Raiders just lost their 1st-round pick, Damon Arnett, to an aggravation of his previously fractured thumb. Devin Singletary did pretty much what we expected him to do, 121 total yards in week 3. And we'll have to see if Zach Moss will be back. If no Zach Moss again, Devin Singletary, who did get a few goal line carries in that game, did not execute, but was still involved in the passing game and could get some more goal line opportunities this week. If no Zach Moss again, then Devin Singletary is going to be a real rock solid, RB1/RB2. And Josh Allen, that was kind of, padding his MVP resume with 5 all-purpose touchdowns, and he did contribute to the Bills squandering that lead. But then he led the game-winning drive, and so the Bills have shown that they can win it in a variety of ways.
Yeah, the Devin Singletary stuff was really what stuck out to me the most in this game, because you remove Zach Moss and you have a true workhorse in Devin Singletary. 89% of the snaps, 81% of the RB carries. They didn't seem likely to use TJ Yeldon, although Yeldon did get a little bit of work around the goal line. I think that was more fluky than anything else. The only thing capping Devin Singletary's upside, of course, is going to be Josh Allen stealing goal line runs, but still, Devin Singletary, while Zach Moss is out, going to be really strong. Let's go to Cincinnati. I think there's a lot to talk about in Cincinnati. First of all, shout out to my age model. You guys know I have this model where there's only one input and it's age, and Tyler playing Tyler Boyd over AJ Green worked out in a big way this past week. Speaking of the age model, they seem to be warming on T. Higgins because Auden Tate and Mike Thomas barely played. John Ross was a healthy scratch. T. Higgins actually ran the most routes out of any Cincinnati wide receiver in that game. People are excited about T. Higgins. They're looking to pick him up. What do you think about that? And then I do want to get to Joe Mixon also.
Yeah, I think that the Bengals' future, their 3 receiver set of the future might be Tyler Boyd in the slot with T. Higgins and Auden Tate on the outside. So for dynasty leaguers, they should file that away. AJ Green, he had the opportunity, he had the air yards, and he continued to not deliver against Philadelphia. So I think that he's probably on his last legs. Joe Mixon continues to frustrate, but he is a guy who has some great matchups coming up this week against Jacksonville, where the Bengals will be a home favorite. And then he's got the Titans coming up pretty soon too, and they have been just getting absolutely slaughtered in terms of run defense. So I think that Joe Mixon, although I know it's been frustrating, but that's that creates buying opportunities for running back needy teams. Because the guys who have him right now are frustrated with Joe Mixon and probably willing to sell him on the cheap. His role is not, his role is secure. Like, he's going to be getting 17 to 21 touches every single game, and that's not going to change. The Bengals gave him that big extension before the season, and Giovanni Bernard is a role player in the Bengals offense. Drew Sample was not involved in the passing game this past week, and it might take like comeback mode and garbage time mode to get him back going.
Yeah, Drew Sample did run 34 routes, only got 1 target. Yeah, and people are panicked on Joe Mixon. They say Joe Mixon's losing work to Giovanni Bernard, which I think is overstated a little bit. And Joe Mixon's offensive line is so bad he can't do anything. We'll see, man. I don't want to go as far to say he's like a screaming buy low. I think you probably think that he is a screaming buy low, but I do think better days are ahead for Joe Mixon, and he's extremely cheap on DraftKings this week, despite a matchup with the Jaguars. So we'll be talking about him more on Friday. Cleveland Browns. I mean, they keep ripping off an insane amount of running back carries. 35 running back carries in week 3, 32 running back carries in week 2. I mean, that's a ton, and there will be games though when maybe, Nick Chubb only gets 15 touches because the total number is going to be way less. So I don't know. I think there's some merit in considering a sell high on Nick Chubb. And also, I regret for me, I was probably too high on Odell. Luckily, I got off him. Thanks in part to you. I got off him in any GPP lineups this week, but maybe too high on Odell during redraft season just because, I mean, ideally, they're just not going to throw. And Odell even seemed to admit it. He's like, I'm not going to have big numbers in this scheme. It's just hard to see them getting into shootouts, although this week maybe is a chance for them actually to get into a shootout. They play the Cowboys. So what do you think about what's going on with the Browns?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is going to be, the best week that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham and to a lesser extent Jarvis Landry have had to have an actually big game in the passing game. The Browns don't want to be that kind of team, but there will be situations along the way wherein they have to throw the ball more. And the Cowboys have been getting shredded through the air. So that will be a situation we'll definitely be talking about on Friday. Austin Hooper, I think, remains a drop. And, just he'll be maybe a matchup-based streamer at best. I think that with the projected game script in week 4 at Dallas, Kareem Hunt is going to be really, really interesting if the Browns are playing from behind. He's got a locked-in role when the game script is, neutral. And then when they're playing from behind, his role can grow. So I think that he actually might have more upside this week than does Nick Chubb at Dallas.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody saw Nick Chubb line up as like a pure Kareem Hunt line up as a pure wide receiver, get the ball on the first read, score a touchdown. And I think that's obviously incredibly valuable. If something ever happened to Nick Chubb, I mean, Kareem Hunt would be like out of this world, like top 3 option. Denver, gosh, what a mess Denver is. And we knew this going in. I mean, they just can't sustain the amount of injuries that they've had. They play on Thursday night against the Jets. Like, I almost feel bad for the people who like produce and run these Thursday night games. How do they get stuck with the worst, like the nut low games every single year? It seems like they're going to have the Jets, like the embarrassment of the NFL, against a Broncos team without Cortland Sutton, without a ton of injuries. And it's going to be starting Brett Rippon, they announced today. They're going to be starting Brett Rippon over Jeff Driscoll, over Blake Bortles. Only thing that I would note maybe on a positive, KJ Hamler did play 58 out of 63 snaps. Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy were the 3 wide set. Deshaun Hamilton barely played. It's going to be hit or miss with KJ Hamler. We know the situation, awful quarterback play, rookie in his second game, far from prototypical size. But at least it was good to see KJ Hamler out there a lot. Anything on Denver? They are such a mess.
I think the most reliable member of the Denver pass catcher core, regardless of quarterback, is going to continue to be Noah Fant, who got in the paint in weeks 1 and 2. He only went 5 for 46 this past week, but that's not a terrible line for a tight end. And he saw 10 targets. So they're going to continue to proactively call plays for him, and he remains an every week tight end 1.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to a team that's more fun. The Houston Texans. Great to see Will Fuller back out there. Was not on the injury report at all last week. Goes into the game without an injury designation. Plays 94% of the snaps in a very difficult matchup against Pittsburgh. Gets a really nice TD. Now, Vikings, Jaguars, Titans, Packers, Jaguars next for Will Fuller. The time is now to step on the gas with Will Fuller. Other thing that I've noticed with the Texans is Duke Johnson, while he's been out the last 2 games, I mean, it's been quiet, but he's been out. David Johnson has an outrageous role, like the best role in the NFL. 96% of the running back touches have gone to David Johnson over the last 2 weeks. Now, we haven't talked about it a lot because it's been against the Ravens and it's been against the Steelers. But now he gets this Vikings defense, which is just woeful. And so if Duke Johnson is out, David Johnson is going to be very interesting, I think, in week 4. What do you see going on with the Texans?
Yeah, the upcoming schedule makes a lot of Texans players buys coming up. And that begins with Deshaun Watson. That extends to Will Fuller. I think Brandon Cooks currently leads the team in targets and air yard share. And he has a locked-in role. He was limited, of course, in that week 1 game, but he's been an above 80% player in their offense since then. So I think that we're gonna start to see some fireworks from the Texans offense forthcoming.
For sure. Colts. I was, I didn't have any Michael Pittman, but I like Michael Pittman, and with Paris Campbell down, I wanted Michael Pittman to get a good chance, and now he goes down also. So now they have Hilton and Zach Pascal, and maybe, I don't know who's the number 3, Ashton Doolin or something like that. What do you think about Zach Pascal as an ad? Because Zach Pascal has had time as a number 1 receiver in this league and performed reasonably well. Like, I actually think Zach Pascal can play a bit. What do you think about Zach Pascal as an ad and anything else on the Colts?
Well, Frank Reich historically has been very willing to change his personnel packages to suit the strengths and minimize the weaknesses of his actual personnel. And so I think that we're going to start to see them play a lot of 2 tight end sets, maybe even some 3 tight end sets with Trey Burton tentatively due back. And that would create a lot of opportunities for just 2 receiver formations. I think they're going to have to go back to T.Y. Hilton, who they've limited a little bit the last 2 weeks as a full-time player. And Zach Pascal will be the number 2. Zach Pascal is a guy that I've got like on a lot of Dynasty League benches and in the Scott Fish Bowl and, deeper bench leagues. And I think that he's going to be a usable player as like a wide receiver 4/flex. This still is a team that does not want to throw the ball voluminously, and they want to just be efficient in the passing game, and they have been. I mean, Phillip Rivers is 6th. Withered Phillip Rivers is 6th in the NFL in yards per pass attempt, and is completing almost 80% of his throws. But this team is still going to be founded on the running game, and Nyheim Hines, it looks like he's going to be a guy that, pops up and, pops down and pops up again. And so he's going to be difficult to predict. I'm not worried about Jonathan Taylor only getting 14 touches this past week. I think that, especially against the Bears coming up, and the Bears have not been good against the run, but they have been really good against the pass. They're a clear run funnel defense. We're going to see them go back to Jonathan Taylor for a very large workload this week.
When you get 2 defensive touchdowns, I mean, game scripts are just off the wall. So, I talked about this on the solo pod some about using Jonathan Taylor with the Colts defense in large field tournaments and why I thought that correlation is getting thin in large field just because, game script just got out of control for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the Jets ran more plays than the Colts. So, yeah, I'm not worried about Jonathan Taylor at all. And yeah, Phillip Rivers, my age bias makes me think that Phillip Rivers is completely withered. I don't know if that's true or not. Obviously, the stats so far are good on Phillip Rivers. One thing I would say about this team, though, Brandon has their offensive line and their defensive line both like in the top 2 or top 3. I mean, this is how they're going to win in the trenches with their offensive line and defensive line.
And that is a formula for Jonathan Taylor to eat.
Yep. Okay. Jacksonville. James Robinson, man. I mean, James Robinson is 6,500 on DraftKings this week. More than Joe Mixon, more than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, more than Kenyon Drake, more than Devin Singletary. I get it. Through 3 weeks, James Robinson has handled 91% of Jacksonville's running back carries, and he's seen 10% of the team targets. I mean, that is beyond elite usage. We don't see this kind of usage for running backs in today's NFL very much. Are you buying James Robinson as like a no doubt RB1 top 10 option every week going forward? Again, he gets the Bengals this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think for this week he is, for sure. This is going to be one of the best matchups that he'll get for the rest of the season. He also plays in a division where the Texans defense is bad. The Titans defense has been extremely disappointing so far. So James Robinson is definitely set up to be an every week starter for the foreseeable future. And even last week on Thursday night with Chris Thompson did play a good amount, enough to get 5 catches. James Robinson still led the team in receiving and rushing. So he's someone that, the Jaguars coaching staff absolutely loves. And I mean, you could tell why. The dude can break tackles and he can play in all phases. So he's going to continue to be out there a lot. And he still has not topped 17 touches in an individual game yet. But he's going to exceed that in upcoming games. I have no doubt.
Kansas City Chiefs, very impressive performance in Baltimore last night. However, and it was a good game for Mecole Hardman, but still the free Mecole movement has a long way to go. Only 29 snaps for Mecole Hardman, 41 snaps for wind sprinting Demarcus Robinson out there. What did you see out of the Chiefs last night? Patrick, I went into a season-long league last night with like a 35-point lead. He had Patrick Mahomes. Of course, I got dusted. What did you see out of the Chiefs last night?
I love the way that Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked in the passing game. And this is a guy who doesn't have, I don't think he has any touchdowns yet. He might have one. And I think that people might be starting to get a little antsy with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think that he is in a buy low opportunity. But yeah, I mean, that was a vintage Kansas City Chiefs offensive output. against a defense that I think that we probably all respect. And so, a reminder that even though they started a little bit slow against the Texans and then against the Chargers, Chiefs offense is going to be elite and highly, highly potent the rest of the way.
I love that you give Andy Reid like an extra day. He has like an underhand shovel pass to Anthony Sherman. He has a pass to Eric Fisher for a touchdown. It's just so cool to watch. And yeah, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have some huge games. Like you can just tell he's just going to erupt at some point here coming up soon. Los Angeles Chargers. Injury front, Mike Williams went down again. I'm not sure it matters because Justin Herbert is absolutely locked on to Keenan Allen. I mean, Keenan Allen has an outrageous target share with Justin Herbert under center, and Austin Eckler shares are going through the roof with Justin Herbert. 15 targets, 20% target share for Austin Eckler since Justin Herbert took over. What did you see out of the Chargers, and do you have any interest in anybody beyond Eckler, Keenan, Hunter Henry now that Mike Williams looked like he's going to miss some time with a hamstring injury?
I really don't. I mean, the guys to talk about would be like Jalen Guyton and KJ Hill, and those guys just don't interest me. I think that Justin Herbert came back down to earth a little bit this past week. Joshua Kelly was efficient on the ground, averaging almost 5.5 yards per carry, but he lost a fumble, and the game script did not go his way. He's going to be a game script dependent fantasy producer, and he's going to need the Chargers to be in positive game script. And the Chargers' defensive injuries are starting to pile up again. They lost Derwin James before the season. We talked last week about how losing Justin Jones and Melvin Ingram up front could positively affect Mike Davis, and that wound up being the case. And Mike Davis also was very, very productive, of course, in the passing game. But we'll talk about the Panthers on the next podcast. But yeah, I mean, 29 targets over the last 2 weeks from Justin Herbert to Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is back in like a wide receiver 1 driver's seat after it looked like he was going to maybe even struggle for wide receiver 3 numbers with Tyrod Taylor under center.
Yeah, and it's tough because, we had a full fade on Chargers during season long, and I think that would have been super profitable if Tyrod would have held on to the job. And maybe people would say, hey, it was clear, you draft a guy 6th overall, wherever they took Herbert, that Tyrod wasn't going to last. I mean, I don't know. It's just something to think about.
I mean, Tyrod Taylor got a punctured lung.
I know.
Yeah.
He was so bad in week 1, but yeah, he did get a punctured. Okay. Raiders. We were worried about Josh Jacobs. The targets have been there for Josh Jacobs. He hasn't played on pass downs, but when Josh Jacobs has been in there on base downs, they haven't hesitated to throw to him. I mean, he's been getting the ball thrown to him a reasonable amount, and the Patriots kind of sold out to take out Darren Waller. They sold out to stop the check downs. And so it was kind of a weird spot. I would also note that Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards are both hurt now. They do have very tough matchups coming up. Bills, Chiefs, Bucks next. So I don't know if there's a lot to talk about with the Raiders here. Not a lot to get excited about. What you see out of their game? I know you were on the Patriots in that game.
Yes. And got Wiggins on the Patriots too, and we were able to pull out that victory. I'm just waiting to see what happens with these Raiders wide receiver injuries. I think that Darren Waller is going to get back on track. The Patriots did a lot of different things to take Darren Waller away, as we anticipated. There were double teams. There were cornerback and linebacker used in coverage against him. There were snaps where they just played Stephon Gilmore straight up on Darren Waller, but he's going to continue to be a heavy focal point of the Raiders passing attack, especially with the injuries to Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. And then Hunter Renfrow, who led the Raiders in receiving last week. Now the Raiders are facing the Bills. We saw Cooper Kupp in the slot just have a big game against the Bills. The Bills can be attacked in the slot. So I think that Hunter Renfrow is a guy that we'll be talking about.
Miami Dolphins, and people are excited about Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin outsnapped Matt Breida 46-11, and Jordan Howard only played 4 snaps. The problem is all 4 of Jordan Howard's snaps were at the goal line. Like, I think Jordan Howard leads the league right now in carries inside the 5-yard line. So that's tough for Gaskin, but he looks reasonably good, and Ryan Fitzpatrick makes people around him fantasy options. What do you think about Myles Gaskin as a pickup?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think that he's a guy that should be owned in all fantasy leagues at this point. I think that his touchdown equity is limited for the reasons that you mentioned, and he's not really a guy that's going to break long runs. He's like a 4'6", 40 guy, but he's involved in the passing game, and they're feeding him. I mean, his playing time has grown every week so far, and they fed him 22 carries and 5 catches in the past week, or against the Jags in week 3. So Myles Gaskin is getting a lot of work, and I don't see any reason for them to go away from him. I mean, Jordan Howard can get it done at the goal line, but has not been getting it done otherwise, and neither has Matt Breida. So this looks like Myles Gaskin's backfield. I'm excited for this game, Seattle against Miami in week 4. I think that we could see some serious scoring because I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick has played well in consecutive games now. He played really well against the Bills, almost brought the Dolphins back in that week 2 game, and now going up against Seattle, which doesn't really rush the passer well, and has been giving up gobs of passing game production. I'm excited for this game.
Yeah, should be good. I wish they would just get rid. Like, Jordan Howard's not even effective at the goal line. Like, Jordan Howard just sucks. I've had enough of Jordan Howard. Okay, New England, and I've been lower than market on Cam Newton going back to redraft in DFS. I don't think I've played Cam Newton at all. I didn't have any Cam Newton this past weekend against the Raiders, and finally I was at last rewarded because Cam struggled. And I know they won easily, but Cam was not great in this game. I think when he has a lot and so much tied up in rushing touchdowns and the weaponry is so bad, there's going to be some downs for Cam Newton. And we had that article we've been putting up, a buy or sell article on ETR. One of the questions that we did this past week ahead of week 3 was, is Cam Newton a top 5 quarterback the rest of the way for you? And I was the only one that said no. I'm not sure if Sunday's performance changes anything there for people or not. Other thing in this game, Rex Burkhead absolutely went nuclear, Evan's boy Rex Burkhead. And the question with Rex Burkhead is always going to be, when will James White be back? James White obviously dealing with an awful personal situation. I do not know when James White will be back, but what did you see out of Cam and Rex and the Patriots?
Yeah, probably should have been on Rex Burkhead a little bit more than we were last week. But he wound up being a sensational play. He did benefit from no James White, as you mentioned. Then Damian Harris is also eligible to return from IR this week. So this backfield is going to remain really, really muddy. And so I'm not trying to chase, the production that occurred from not only Rex Burkhead, but also from Sony Michel, who had 2 runs over 35 yards. He had never in his career before had a run longer than 35 yards. And he had 2 of them against the Raiders. I think it's probably just more an indication that we need to attack the Raiders on the ground with our running backs than it is, that Sony Michel is all of a sudden going to be a good fantasy play.
Yep. Jets. Gosh. They went to Indy with literally no chance, no prayer whatsoever. And that's the way that it played out. There are rumors swirling, and they're not credible, but there's rumors swirling that if the Jets lose to Brett Rippon and the Broncos on Thursday, that Adam Gase will be fired. Do you think it's worth hanging on to guys like Chris Herndon or anybody else while we wait to see if Adam Gase gets fired? Would that be enough to turn things around for this offense?
I mean, if they pull Adam Gase out, then it's going to be his boy Dowell Loggins running the offense. So I'm not sure that a whole lot is going to change. And Dowell Loggins has a very, very poor track record with and without Adam Gase in his coaching history. The Jets need to get healthy at receiver. They need to get their offensive line figured out. I mean, they put a ton of money and draft picks into that offensive line, and it has really performed poorly early in the season. Hopefully it can sort of grow together and they can play better moving forward. But I mean, this is the worst team in the NFL. Last week we talked about how there were 3 teams maybe in contention for the worst team in the NFL. I think we could pull the Vikings out of that, and it's down to the Giants and the Jets in their own tier.
What about the Broncos?
Well, I mean, that's primarily been caused by injury, but the Giants and the Jets have dealt with injuries too. I mean, the Broncos could definitely make a run for that bottom tier across the league with the Giants and the Jets.
Yeah, I would say worst is the Jets, second worst is Broncos, third. We'll talk about it in the next podcast, but I'm still clinging to hope on the Giants, maybe foolishly so. Pittsburgh, obviously we were excited about Deontay Johnson. We've been excited about Deontay Johnson going back to August and July, and so sucks to see him go down 19 snaps into the game with a concussion. I was excited, though, to see Chase Claypool lead the Pittsburgh wide receivers in snaps. And if Deontay Johnson misses time, and we'll see if this game happens between the Steelers and the Titans, but if Deontay Johnson can't go and the game is played, I think it's going to be Claypool and James Washington on the outside, Juju Smith-Schuster in the slot. I think Chase Claypool can play, man. So he would be an add for me in deeper formats, then we can kind of see what's going on. What did you see out of that? Anything else with the Steelers?
Yeah, definitely. And Ben continues to play at a high level. He's been very efficient so far. It was looking like James Conner was dead in the water after week 1, but that has clearly proven to not be the case. Benny Snell has been horrific over the past 2 games, like 16 yards on 11 carries and a lost fumble. And, so much so that I think that Anthony McFarland, their 4th-round rookie, could actually end up swiping that number 2 job away from him. But James Conner is locked and loaded right now as an every week running back 1, at least as long as he stays healthy.
Okay, last one we are going to do today is the Tennessee Titans. And bad news on A.J. Brown came on Sunday. Sounds like a more serious injury than maybe at first seemed like for A.J. Brown. Not expecting to see him anytime too soon. The big dog got loose, though, on the good side of things. I mean, big dog has 82 carries through 3 games, which is just absurd in today's NFL. But does have to play Pittsburgh, does have to play Buffalo next. Not the greatest spots for the big dog. What did you see out of the Titans?
Yeah, and Derrick Henry still does not have a long run. The positive regression in terms of touchdowns did hit him hard last week with 2 scores, and he ran 22 routes, which is most of the season so far. Like to see that. He mixed in a couple of catches, got 3 targets. I think that this offense, we know the identity of this offense, and although there are difficult matchups upcoming, and I'm not sure that Buffalo is that difficult a matchup. We saw Darrell Henderson carve them up this past week. But Derrick Henry is going to be he leads the NFL in touches. So, he's almost like an opponent-proof RB1, not a top 5 RB1, I don't think, but he's in that mix like number 6, 7, 8.
If you guys have been listening to the free podcast in our network with Corain and Leone called Establish the Edge, they've spent a lot of time talking about not yards per route run, but targets per route run for tight ends. And Jonnu Smith is a standout in that category. And so we'll be releasing some data on that soon. Keep an eye out for that, though. But I think that's at least worth mentioning. One other thing I wanted to mention on this game, if you're considering claims on Chase Claypool or anybody else on Pittsburgh or anybody else on Tennessee, I would follow the news closely because obviously, let's say you pick up Chase Claypool, hope to spot start him while Deontay Johnson's out, but then the game gets canceled and then blah, blah, blah. Deontay Johnson's back and now you burned up your waiver on Chase Claypool. So it's something to monitor for sure. Okay, we'll be back on the premium feed to go team by team through the NFC. For Evan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.